Hello, I'm Philip Konopka, Ag Agent in Lewis County.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Konopka, Ag Agent in Carter County, and welcome to Around the Farm. Today we're going to be talking about the growth stages in corn. So many times if you're looking at a pesticide label, it will tell you to apply the pesticide at or up to a certain growth stage. But what are those growth stages? Those stages are referred to as V and R with another letter or number following them. So V stands for the vegetative growth stages and R stands for the reproductive stages. We're going to look at a few corn plants today and how can we tell what growth stage that those plants are in?
And that's a great question, Rebecca. And simply figuring out how many leaves have come out. Now sometimes it's as simple as when the plants are small to count the leaves, but when corn gets this tall, a lot of times the first couple leaves have gone. So in order to be exactly sure what we need to do, is we're going to have to dig one of these plants up and cut it in half. And then we can tell by the nodes in the plant. The first one is usually VE, and that's typically when the corn pops through the ground. Okay. In order to tell where the corn plant is at by counting the leaves, you don't count the leaves that haven't opened up. You want to look here at the collar of the leaf, and when it starts to look like a shirt collar and open up, that's when we count that leaf.
But to be 100% accurate, we need to dig this plant up and cut it up, right?
Yes, we want to count the nodes. And typically the first 4 nodes are close together. There will not be any distinction. A lot of times that 5th node, there's not much, so you got to be very careful of it. We need a couple of tools to do this. We need a shovel and a good sharp knife. We want to dig the plant up to make sure we get the whole stem. Knock the soil off of it. Now when we counted the leaves earlier in the field, I missed this leaf. It was down on the ground, it was brown, I didn't see it. So we said it was at V5. We're going to take our knife, we're going to split the stalk on the truck bed all the way down the center. When we open it up, now we can see the nodes in the plant. As we can see here from the nodes, the first 4 are right here. They're very close. They're hard to distinguish between each other. Here's the 5th, here's the 6th, and here's the start of the 7th. Like I said, we couldn't count that 7th leaf at the top because it hadn't opened up and fully developed yet. So we're actually at V6. If we hadn't seen this leaf or cut the stem, we could have missed a growth stage in there very quickly. We're in a different cornfield right now. As you see, these leaves are curled. This is due to water stress. If you look at our plant growth stage, we're going to count the leaves. Here's our first leaf that is dried and not gone off yet. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Our 5th leaf here has opened up like a shirt collar, but our 6th leaf hasn't. So we're at V5 on this particular plant.
At V6, our growing point moves above the ground.
When we get to V12, the plant is starting to decide and determine the ear size, the number of kernels, and all that fun stuff. When we get up to V15, that's when we're most sensitive to stress on the plant, and that's when we're going to have our most growth. We're about 12 to 15 days away from tassel. When we get to the tassel, that's called VT.
Moving into our reproductive stages, R1 is silking. This is when pollination is occurring, so water uptake is very important, and 50% of our total nitrogen will be used up after the R1 stage.
When we get to R2, the silks are starting to dry out, the ear is at mature size, and then each fertile kernel will have a little corn plant in it.
And the next stage is R3, and that's the blister stage.
R4 is our dough stage, and that's when our kernels have accumulated 50% of their dry weight. When we get to R5, which is the dent, we're starting to dry down, and most of the kernels are getting close to a 55% moisture.
And our final stage is R6, and that's physiological maturity, and that's when the black layer has formed on our kernels. Just like with corn, soybean growth stages can be used to help make management decisions too. Vegetative and reproductive growth stages, once again, are marked with V's and R's with numbers and letters following them.
V meaning vegetative and R meaning reproductive.
So when you're determining the vegetative stage, you look at the number of trifoliate leaves that are fully open. And so that means all 3 leaves are spread out and not touching. And an undeveloped leaf is not fully open yet, and those leaf edges will be touching on the leaflets.
When they first come out of the ground, that's called VE, or vegetative emergence. The cotyledons are still touching. Once they open up and are no longer touching, that becomes VC. Then we move on to the first trifoliate, and it has to be fully open before we can count it. And that's typically, if you happen to dig one up, you can start to see some of the nodules develop on the roots, although they're not really functioning quite at that point in time.
But V2, those root nodules will be fully functioning and fixing nitrogen, and you'll be able to see 2 fully open trifoliate leaves, followed by the V3 stage, which is where a lot of our herbicides can be applied. And as the number would suggest, there are 3 trifoliate leaves open. As the plant continues to grow in the vegetative state, the growth stages are continued to be marked as V, and then the number of trifoliate leaves that are open. And this will be determined by environmental conditions as well as the variety that you have planted. After our vegetative states, we move into the reproductive states. So R1 is our beginning flowering stage, and that's where there's a bloom somewhere on the main stem at one of the nodes. R2 is the full flowering stage, where one of the top 2 trifoliate leaves will have blooms along the nodes. Rapid growth occurs during the R2 stage. R3 is our beginning pod stage, and that's where we'll have a 3/16 inch pod along the first node. It's at this time that our last pesticide applications can be applied. During the first 3 reproductive stages, environmental effects will have little impact on our yield potential. However, in R4, environmental effects and plant injury can greatly reduce our yields. And R4 is the full pod stage, where you'll have up to a 3/4 inch pod on your bean plants at that point.
R5 is our beginning seed field. When we get to R6, if you get on the top 4 nodes on the main stem and we start to see full development of the seeds will fill up the pods fully. At this point in the game, weather conditions and environmental factors can play a big factor on our yield potential. When we get to R7, our pods, you'll find a pod that is turning brownish in color, and we have reached physiologically maturity at that point. And then our final stage is R8. At R8, that is when 95% of the pods on the plant have turned a tannish color, and we're getting close to harvest. We just pulled a plant up out of the field. At this growth stage, we've got 1 trifoliate, 2 trifoliates, 3, 4. This 5th one is not quite opened up yet. It's still cupping together, so we're at a V4. Here's the next trifoliate. In the next day or so, this one will open up. We'll be at V5, and here's the start of 6 and 7.
In order for us to say that our entire field is at V5, we need at least 50% of the plants in the field to be at V5 or higher.
So randomly check across your field. Don't just pick one corner. Walk across the field and grab a few and check the growth stages.
We hope the video today will aid in your decisions for your crop. If you have questions about growth stages or other things related to your corn crop, feel free to contact your local county extension office.
Thanks and have a wonderful day.